Hello and welcome to ChatDPS. Better late than never this week, I'm afraid. Everyone's a bit busy, and we're all fighting for time with each other. So Adam, unfortunately, won't be able to join us this week. He's up to his neck in alligators, and Robert and I are going to give it a good go around an article from the Public Accountant. Now, then, obviously, not normally sort of viewed as soporific reading, but what this does prove is that interesting content can come from many different providers. This week, we talk about 5 defenses in your fight against cybervillains. I'll let Robert explain more in detail, but this article highlights that AI is supercharging cybercrime, making digital threats smarter and more relentless. Cybersecurity teams can also use AI to detect suspicious patterns and insider risks. Accountants are prime targets due to the sensitive client information that they hold. I've had experience of that just this last week. And basic cybersecurity hygiene and practical controls are crucial for defending against attacks. This is a point that we've been making consistently for months. And I think that basic hygiene controls are definitely something that we need to get back in vogue. And this article, particularly the trends, are provided from a Google report with inputs from Issachar and Gartner. So there's some good credibility behind what's being said. And it also highlights the current risks and what we need to do in keeping up to date and adapting as we go forward. So, Robert, do you want to explain a little bit more about your insights from the article and where we're up to with things, and what risk managers and people like that are going to have to be considering when they take this thing forward?
Yeah, sure. So I think we've kicked off the year 2026 in our previous podcast, sort of looking forward, looking back in terms of what we've seen in 2025, looking forward in terms of the things that we should be looking at and businesses should be looking at in 2026. And I think this article is actually quite good in trying to pull together some of those things to look out for in 2026, some of those risks in the cyber security space to be considering. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it links a number of reports, including this report from Google. And let's start there. So just in terms of highlighting some of those trends you should be aware of. So I'll just quickly run through it, and we can go into a little bit more detail if we need to. So the first thing that Google says is cyber thieves will adopt agentic systems, autonomous AI systems, to help them streamline and scale their attacks. Ransomware threats will keep evolving. We'll see an increase in shadow AI threats as employees use AI tools without their IT leaders' knowledge. We'll see more shadow agent issues where companies' use of AI agents for work tasks exposes them to potential data leaks, etc. And there's also going to be a rise in prompt injection threats, attacks that manipulate AI to make it bypass security protocols. So very much AI driven. So I guess the key thing in terms of, so if you're looking after GRC in any kind of capacity with an organization. Okay, so here is some key risk themes for the year to consider. And I guess the first sort of question to ask is, okay, well, these AI risks have been identified in terms of threats to as ways of attacking organizations. Is my organization likely to be threatened by these sorts of attacks? What are the mitigations that we have in place to defend against that? And so, look, it might be that, for example, your organization is not using LLMs, so you may not be worried about prompt injection threats, as an example.
Yeah.
However, generally speaking, ransomware, pretty much most organizations that are holding personal information, some sort of sensitive data, are susceptible to ransomware attacks, and that is something that risk managers, directors, those CIOs should be thinking about. Okay, so the cyber criminals are going to get more sophisticated. They're going to be able to scale up their attacks, and we're going to see things like, and I think Google references it, things like phishing. So that's with a V. So either voicemail phishing or video phishing, where attackers are cloning the voice of a key executive, CEO, CFO, whoever it might be, and trying to use that to get an employee of an organization to redirect funds, pay funds to somewhere they shouldn't. And that also includes using video, so images, but moving images. So you might be thinking you're having a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting with, again, a senior executive, but it's just an AI clone of that individual. So we are seeing those sorts of attacks in 2025, and what Google is saying is we expect to see more of those in 2026. There needs to be things like awareness programs. So what training are you doing to your staff? What are your processes look in order to make sure that um, people are not sending emails or not receiving emails from the wrong people? And so you need to be looking at those. So do you need to upgrade your technology? Do you need smarter
Yeah.
smarter solutions? And so one of the things that is mentioned in the article is one way of fighting back against AI attacks is to defend with AI tools. So
AI.
so solutions are out there which have additional smarts to look for strange behaviors or strange activity on systems. So yeah, those are the sorts of things you need to be thinking
Yeah.
about in terms of what do I need to what do I need to change? What risks do I need to be responding to in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that sort of like springs out at me from that is the fact, I mean, let's highlight this whole evolving risk thing or evolving and changing within the marketplace. Just a few years ago, shadow IT was a mild irritant. It was a budgetary problem. Yeah. Oh, I haven't budgeted for this. And why am all of a sudden have I got all these bills coming in from multiple cloud providers because my internal service provider isn't doing a job that's actually adequate to support the staff and doing and meeting their needs. It's now reached a point where it should be a sackable offense to use shadow IT to achieve an outcome within the business because of the inherent risks. I mean, particularly with AI now coming along, that is a prime time evolving risk and budgetary through to now business exposure. And that's a real problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's something we've touched on before. Is you need to move at the pace of technology, and risks also are moving at the pace of technology, not at the
Bureaucracy.
pace of bureaucracy, and that includes business bureaucracy as well. So, um, this is not something where you set and forget. You should be looking at your risk register on a regular basis at a senior level and thinking, okay, so what is going on out there? So you do need to rely on being able to understand what the trends are. And so this is perfect. So you've got this report from Google. Okay, so that information is out there in the public domain. Those are the sorts of things you should be bringing into your internal discussions and going, okay, as I said, look, there's AI kind of driven risk out there in terms of cyber attacks. What are we doing as an organization to defend against that? And again, it comes down to big picture thinking, framework thinking, identifying what information you have, figuring out how you're going to protect that information, how you're going to detect if there is an attack, how you're going to recover, how you're going to govern the whole how that whole system as well. So you've really got to think in those big picture terms, but you should be doing that on a regular basis because these threats are changing constantly.
Yeah. So, what were the other things that were the other themes from the Google report? Then, I mean, obviously the
So
shadow IT and the shadow
yeah,
agents, big
well, the
big problems.
shadow AI, I think, was the key thing. So while you might have policies around restricted use around Copilot or whatever it might be, it's going to be very hard to stop somebody bringing in their personal mobile phone and firing up ChatGPT and potentially feeding in business information into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then you've got potential breaches of Privacy Act and breaches of confidentiality that are happening, which are just uncontrolled. So that's a real concern. I mean, I think the key thing is the fact that with the power of AI, that really kind of supercharges the ability for attackers to scale up, to become much more sophisticated in terms of their attempts to hack into organizations, much more sophisticated phishing attempts, as I said, phishing attempts. So it's much easier to fool individuals. And as we know, most breaches come from an individual mistake or error. So much easier to target the individuals within your organization. So your security is only as strong as your weakest point. And as threats evolve, you need to be constantly making your employees aware of what the threats are so that they make sure they check next time they get an email that seems a little bit odd in terms of, can you please direct funds to so and so. They need to go, oh, okay, I'm aware of this. I've had some training. I need to check this. This doesn't seem right to me. And whether they're using technology to analyze that, or whether they're using processes, or whether they're using it based on the training they've had, hopefully they can catch these things.
So what seems to me to be sort of like fairly clear at this moment in time that the threats are being pushed down through the verticals at this moment in time. And I mean, at the larger end of town, the enterprise end of town, we've got more than 2,000 employees or whatever. These guys are, they've got set and forget. They've got the access control units in place. Some of the some of the people that are lower down the stack in those verticals just don't. I mean, they haven't. It's an expensive thing to run and what have you. I mean, is that fair, or does it mean to say that they're going to have to start thinking about those things in those businesses pretty soon?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that within small to medium enterprise, cyber security, cyber awareness is probably not a high priority. There's many more things going on within the business, and this sort of falls by the wayside. And I think there's probably an attitude of, well, we're not Optus or Medibank, so this is not going to happen to us. But what we've tended to see when you actually look into, we've talked about it, when you actually look into the data, it's these small to medium enterprises, and professional services is definitely one of those sectors that gets targeted precisely because they're a soft underbelly. They don't
Yeah,
spend enough on cybersecurity, people, process, and technology, and they hold huge amounts of personal and sensitive information, which it gets turned into a profit. I mean, the reason that ransomware is such a growing trend is because it's so profitable, and these
yeah.
AI powered criminals will continue to target these soft targets, particularly in professional services, because of the data they hold. And it's far easier to extract a few $100,000 in Bitcoin from those organizations than it is going after the top end of town.
Yeah, so without wishing to sort of like really spook everybody, look, this is real, right? And the difference is that you can spend, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 to prevent those kind of things from happening. Maybe those at the higher end. Or, the threat is that you lose your reputation completely, and, essentially the business is gone because your reputation's in tatters, and you've actually had to spend money out to get to get the data back, I suppose.
Yeah, and for some businesses, as we know, the cost of actually recovering is so
Huge.
great that it may just be an existential threat to the business itself, and it may not survive because it might cost several $100,000 to actually get back to normal operations. So yeah, it's one of those things where we talk about prevention is better than the cure. You
Yeah.
spend a little bit of money up front, and that's your insurance. And so,
But it's not.
and again, I guess it's one of those things where you do need to make that assessment. So, okay, so what is the risk? How do I quantify that? Am I covered by cyber insurance? Can I get covered by cyber insurance? Can I self insure? Or is it worth spending whatever that amount might be to actually prevent what could be an existential threat for the organization?
Yeah, I think that the industry has a responsibility around some of this stuff to ensure that, the value that they're adding is significantly better than the cost of the thing. I mean, whatever it is, yeah, whether it be access control, whether it be certificate lifecycle management, whether it be, whatever it is that's actually going to do. So the value add has got to be coming in the productivity gain that you're going to get from using the tool in order to be able to achieve a better outcome for your business. That just seems to be common sense in terms of, we can give you the best blocker in the business, but that's not going to add anything to your business efficiency and so on and so forth. Okay, Robert. Well, was there anything else that needed to be added from the Ithaca side or whatever?
Yeah, I think maybe we'll just touch on that as a takeaway before we wrap things up. So they did a survey, I think, of various senior executives, CEOs, CIOs, and I always like this. They talk about what keeps the CEO up at night, and these AI driven cyber threats seem to be pretty high up the list. And I think it's all very well being kept up at night, but what are these senior executives actually doing about it? Are they actually then taking that back to their organization and going, okay, we've got these risks. How do we actually address them? So I think there's always that to be said about these things that keep people up at night. But I think in terms of key takeaways from Isaka, they talk about you need to establish robust AI governance and risk frameworks. I mean, I guess that's if you are using, but just generally, you should be establishing robust governance, not just AI governance and risk frameworks. It talks about accelerating workforce upskilling. This is as
Yeah.
technology changes. I think awareness is part of it, but also actually how you use that technology, what to do and what not to do. And then you can have a discussion about shadow AI. It talks about modernizing legacy systems to reduce vulnerabilities. So this is like getting your basics right, getting your house in order. So what patching are you doing? Do you have actually a plan to replace legacy systems? Then it talks about developing and regularly testing incident response plans. We talk about this all the time. You have to have an incident response plan. You have to test it on a regular basis to make sure if it stands up. So this is all stuff that we talk about on a regular basis. And then finally, just be aware of what's going on in the legal and regulatory environment. So if we look at Australia, we've had those Privacy Act changes to increase the penalties. The OAIC has greater powers now. They're starting to flex them. And we're starting to see organizations actually being taken to court and penalized. So significant penalties being given to organizations who are not up to scratch in terms of their cyber resilience practices. So, all of those points, part of the kind of the basic building blocks of any organization, whether you're, very small or very large, it applies to everyone. Each organization needs to right size what they do to their organization. So they take reasonable steps that are proportionate to that organization. But even the smallest organization can have a policy that addresses privacy, that
Yeah.
addresses risk management. If they use a chat or copilot that addresses the use of the AI. So you can always start with the basics. You can always start with, can we switch on MFA? Are we doing regular backups? All of those sorts of things. So start with those basics and you work your way out from there.
So message is go back to basics, understand what your rights are, but understand equally what your responsibilities are and take it forward in a responsible manner. Look, I mean, Robert, that was ChatGPT for this week. That was ChatDPS for this week. And thank you very much for joining me. Look forward to catching up with you again soon.